Rick, you ready?
I'm ready, Keith.
All right, let's do it. So, Rick, this show or topic is about feedback. And it's like, no, man, don't get upset or take feedback personally about your work. And so let me tell you where this came out of. I've been doing the practice for, as you know, 7 years. And I think you told me from the very beginning, there's no end date to this. Like it's a life, it's a
You're
lifelong,
stuck.
it's a lifelong journey. And so, I continue to come up against edges where I need to continue to grow in my practice. And some of them are repeat lessons. So most recently, not recently, over the last 6 months, I have the pleasure of working with this guy, with this colleague at Mayo Clinic who's fantastic, man. His name is Paul Yardley, and he's just amazing, man. I like him so much. And one day I asked him, I was like, Paul, man, how are you just like so kind, man? Like, and not just are you kind, like you don't take things personal. And I think I have grown so much in not taking things personally. And before, if anybody would give me feedback, what I would do, Rick, is if you didn't say, Keith, great job. Anything other than that, we were enemies. We were enemies. I didn't want to hear anything you
Whoa.
said.
Oh
I
my
know,
God.
man.
Wow.
I know. So when I started doing the practice, I made some progress. And my progress was I started teaching people how to give me feedback so my ego wouldn't rise up. And I would say to people, listen, if you want to give me feedback, can you preface it with, hey, may I give you feedback? Like ask my permission. And once I know you're asking my permission, I'll lay down my arms and allow myself to be open to what you have to share. Now, what Paul has taught me is to move beyond that. He didn't set out to teach me this. I was just watching the way he moved, man. So,
Yeah.
so in one of the committees that I'm fortunate to be in at Mayo Clinic, Paul serves as a secretary. And as a secretary, Paul is responsible for like taking down notes, sending out agendas, creating PowerPoint presentations based on what everybody wants to have into the presentation or contribute to it. Like he's got a lot of work to do. I mean, imagine, Rick, it's like your paralegal, right? They got to take down everything you say, they got to act on it, and then they got to prepare all the documents, and then they got to get your feedback on it. So we have so many talented people that I work with. And so, and when we are in our meetings, and Paul says, hey, listen, I think I got everything that you guys want. He sends it ahead of time so people can review it. He can make changes, but everyone is super busy, super busy. And at Mayo Clinic, the way it works is like you have your job description and title, which is like a book by itself. But then underneath it, it says, and then there's a salary that's associated with that job, and then underneath it, it says, and all other duties assigned, which is part of everything else. So it's not like that's not my job. Oh, it's your job. I'm not getting paid for it. We know it's still your job. And so that's how Mayo Clinic works, which I love, man. So you're getting paid for stuff and you're not getting paid for stuff, but it's all the same. I love it. It's like your civic duty for the organization. And so I'm down with that. And it's easy for me because I started out as a volunteer. So to me, it's like, oh, I'm volunteering here and I love it. So anyway, we're sitting in these meetings and somebody will say, Paul, what's like that font, that choice, like change this, change that. And I'm sitting there and watching Paul like, okay, yes, no problem. I can change that. It's like everything that comes back, like he's not taking anything personal. It could be something that somebody said, put in there, and then, like, hey, change this or change that. Paul doesn't get like, but you told me to put it in here. Like this is your idea. Like, I didn't like, he's got none of that going on. And I'm looking at him, Rick, and you know how people, at least me, that you can kind of tell that when you ask me to change something, I may not say anything, but you can tell that I'm closing. My heart is closing.
Yeah.
I'm drifting back. There's a battle going inside. With this guy, it's not happening. I'm sitting there in awe. So one day we got out. It's like, man, that was a tough meeting. Paul's like, what are you talking about? Like it wasn't tough for him. I said, how do you do that, man? How do you take this feedback this way? He's like, Keith, whenever I sit down and I work on whatever's assigned to me, and I am going to go back and give feedback on it, here's what I recognize from day one. This is version 1 of 20. It's gonna be like 20 different revisions and changes along the way. I may start over from scratch 4 or 5 times. It's like, so I never get attached to it. I was like, wow, that's how I could like live more peacefully through life, especially when I'm getting feedback. Is whatever I'm doing, man, we're in rehearsal right now. Like this is not showtime, and it's got to be perfect. And even if it did, it's still rehearsal. And I started thinking about, I'm going to take Paul's way of interacting with feedback and his assignments that way. Like my idea that I have that I become so attached to, that's the problem. I'm attached to it. Look at it like this is version 1 of 50. And it's going to be a lot of rewrites, a lot of revisions and things like that. And I started thinking about the same thing with my life. If I approach it that way, then I will, I would eliminate a lot of suffering in my life. So anyway, Paul and I had this big project that we had to work on with other people. And I'm sitting there and we spent a lot of hours like doing it, via Zoom to work on it. I didn't think I was getting attached to it, but I was. And so we shared it with 2 people who we started working with, and they gave us feedback. They had some minor tweaks about how to go about doing it. It was just super minor tweaks. We made the tweaks to it. I was okay with it. I'm making the changes right there on the spot. And then we expanded out to a bigger group of people that weren't privy to these other conversations that we had, and how we got to this point. And they were like, what is this? Who created this? So, Rick, I felt myself like I was felt myself reeling, man. I was like falling, Rick. I was falling away. And thankfully, I got a glimpse of Paul's face. And Paul's just taking notes. I'm like, oh, thank God, Paul is there to anchor me. Rick, I lost my tether. Like I was out there in space just floating. Yeah. And then Paul reached up. When I looked at him, he grabbed me. He brought me back down. He's like, remember, this is version 1. And I was and then I let it all go, Rick. So he really helped me go to the next level in terms of, being able to accept feedback and be focused on like the collaboration involves a lot of feedback and not taking things personal. I know I spent a lot of time trying to explain the origin of this topic or what inspired it, but hopefully that was helpful.
That's a beautiful example. And the idea that you're tethered to someone who doesn't take things personally is a wonderful way to go. A lot of what we need to do when we start doing a practice is just copying other people that we want to be like. Gandhi said you need to be the change that you see in the universe that you want. Be the change that you see in the world. Just be it. Try it out. Fake it until you make it kind of thing. And that's what you're doing with Paul Yardley when you're talking about getting constructive feedback. When I think of the topic about how to deal with criticism, I think of the fundamental question I think everybody asks inside, silently, without telling anybody else. But the question always is, do you love me?
Yeah.
Do you love me? So when we get criticism, the way that lands on us, if we're not careful, is I don't love you, or I love you with these conditions. And that's very tricky because when you take that out of the personal and put it into the workplace, when you're trying to make sausage all day, there's no place for this idea of competence equaling love and respect for you as a human being. So, there's a context that sometimes we're unable to make, the context choice that we're unable to make between criticism that's required and criticism that we think maybe cuts to the quick because it has to do with not being lovable. And I think we just need to be mindful of that. Am I looking at this in a way where I'm expecting them to admire me for something that has nothing to do with the work, and that they're really poisoning my humanity by making a criticism of me? I think part of that involves also trust. I think it was Goethe who said something like, when you learn how to trust yourself, you'll know how to live. When you learn how to trust yourself, you'll know how to live. So what Paul has mastered is the idea that in the workplace, there are lots of iterations, lots of opinions, lots of bright people thinking strongly and about difficult issues. And many, many of these issues you could take personally, but if you don't take them personally, the job gets done, everybody's happy. That's what Paul's mastered. Other people who are struggling with not knowing how to trust themselves may think this is a comment on my competence. This means that I'm not up to the job. They're going to discover that I'm a fraud, that I don't really have the credentials, that I maybe have the credential, but I really can't do it. It's all false thinking. It's all a narrative, and it's all something that's going to get in the way of successfully completing the work and not having anger or bitterness toward other people who have given you the criticism. Very tough line to walk, but I certainly appreciate it. And I love the idea that you're tethered to Paul Yardley, who's given you an example of, yes, we have to go through 1,000 iterations and it's going to take a long time. We're making sausage and it's ugly, but the outcome's going to be great. Hang in there.
Exactly, Rick. I love what you said in terms of, do you love me? And I think when it comes to the workplace, do you like my idea? Do you like my work product? And so what I found is if I stand in that space long enough with the goal of this part of me has to go, then I can really peel back the layers and see what's at the root of me feeling hurt or wronged or not valued or whatever else. And when I say this part of me, the part of me that wants to make the outside world be a certain way so that I'm okay inside. That's the part's got to go, because the outside world we're incapable of manipulating the external world so that I'm okay inside. It's impossible. You can't do it. But we go about it every single day. Like, I'm going to meet the right person so that I'm okay inside. Or this person who I was with last time is they did this, so I'm not going to date anybody who's this way. So I'm going to only get involved with somebody who's like this. So all you're doing is just moving the chess pieces, but you're still the same. And then you'll meet somebody and then there'll be something that you don't like about them or you don't like about this job. And it all becomes about you trying to manipulate the outside world. That is a fool's errand. And so at least it's been my experience. But if I work on me being okay with whatever shows up outside, then I've done it, man. This is what this whole thing is about. And so when I think back on why I felt like my buttons were pushed or like, oh, you don't like my idea and all the suffering, I'm so glad that I got tethered to Paul so I could stay in that space, because that part of me had to go. When I look back on it, what it was I was attached to my way of seeing things. I was unconscious that there were other people that have been in an organization a lot longer than I have, that had a broader vision, who knew that these are the stakeholders that we need invested in this, if this is going to be here in perpetuity and have some staying power and have the capacity to really make a difference. We need more structure around this. It needs to be designed in this way. Like I didn't have, because I was so attached to my idea and I was looking through this little keyhole, instead of seeing the bigger picture that they bring this broader perspective, I was losing it. And my idea would have been built on sand. They were building the idea on strong foundation. And then they were asking for me to contribute to it. I mean, like, what a gift when I when I can zoom out and take a broader view of it, as long as I'm not attached to it's got to be a certain way, which is my way, and that people have to like my idea and then acknowledge that they like it. So I feel liked and I feel valued. Man, that is a small bar, but that's what the little self does. It doesn't see big picture. It only sees things that reinforce its importance, which is very unimportant, as we both know.
Well, you got the big picture, man. You got the big picture. That's exactly right, Keith.
I'm trying to, Rick. But it's been your example, man. You really, like, I give you so much credit in all our shows, just because of the way that you have like pulled my coattails to like, hey man, the game is not over there. The game is over here. No. You really.
Man, I am a student. I am learning. I'm a very low level guy. You know, I know what to do. It's just hard to do it. That's right.
Well, you're telling me to do it, and that's I love you for that. Rick, thank you for a great show, man.
I love hearing from you, Keith. Take care. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.